All right, here we go. Another true Brew Bobcast here at the end of Détente Road at Cafe Détente. Miss Monica Daigle here today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
You like the latte?
Delicious. Delicious.
Well, good.
Got a reputation for sure.
I know. Well, y'all gonna love this subject matter today, so y'all just hang on. So, where are you from?
Well, I'm originally from a small town west of here, Welch, Louisiana.
Yep.
Left there when I was, 6th grade, 7th grade. Short time in Crowley, and then off to Venezuela. I lived there for my junior high and high school years.
Okay.
Came back to Lafayette when I graduated from high school, and I've been here ever since.
All right. I love it. Local content. All right. So you are a huge Carl Jung fan.
Yes.
And that's why I wrote this down. So you in particularly interested in study his writings and his thoughts and his studies on dreams. And so I looked up, okay, so, and I'm going to jack this up. Honorologist is a person who studies dreams sort of scientifically, the psychological and the physiology and the mechanics of it. And then there's the dream worker, which is a person who helps another explore and understand the deeper meanings and the symbolisms and things like that. Where do you think you fall into all of those, between those two?
Well, my interest and my study is specifically from a Jungian perspective. And so we take a look at, let me back up for a minute. One of the ways that Jungian psychology is different from most other psychologies is that we really, really consider the unconscious as important in our work with individuals as our consciousness. A lot of models will look at for example, a cognitive behavioral model is going to really be working with our conscious awareness. Jung's model looks at the unconscious, and so dreams come in because we're looking at this. The unconscious speaks to us through symbols, through our dreams, and that's really been where my interest and my focus has been.
How is his studies holding up? I know it came in hard back in the day. How's it lasted the last 60 years?
Well, some things have not aged well. Some of his conversations around the anima and animus today, we have, when we talk about male, female, we are looking at things from through a different lens. But really, fundamentally, his theories have held quite well. If we look at, if we consider that, as an individual, we have the physical body, we have our psychology, and of course there's spirituality. There's our capacity for, spirit.
No, you was talking about how it held up, and you have the three ways, and you said it held up pretty well. Which part holds up pretty well? Because he had a lot of them. Which ones you think held up in favor of Jung's studies?
Well, one of them that I think is very relevant today is how he talks about the shadow, the human shadow, and I think a lot of what we look at today in terms of religion and our political climate and how we look at what is right and what is wrong from an outside authority versus from an inner authority in dealing with our own shadow. The idea that all of us have all of it. We have the potential for a lot of gold, a lot of good, and we also have the potential for darkness. Mm-hmm. And some of, how much of that is nature and how much of that is nurture. But, he was very influential in working with Bill W. around the 12 steps. And so, one of the things that you'll hear in those circles is, but for the grace of God go I. I might have, a comfortable home and food to eat and, be a law-abiding citizen, but, I could have been something very, very different. And so when we pay attention to our dreams, for example, as part of our psychological work or part of our spiritual growth or, part of our natural development, then we're looking at, what is in our shadow, and what is it that I need to integrate so that I can be fully human and as conscious as possible. That's really the whole idea of individuation.
So elaborate on the shadow part, because how do you interpret that? Is that a Jung deal? And clear that up for us.
Well, basically, the shadow is everything that that I don't want to be. Anything. If you write down all of the traits that I strive to be, what is it to be a good man? What is it to be a good woman? What is it to be a strong person or a good mother? Write all of those things down. We look at that list, and the shadow is likely to be the opposite.
But isn't that our belief system? Isn't that something that was built and that we were indoctrinated into? I mean, we could live 1,000 different lives, and so isn't that accumulation of our thoughts and interpretations on what's good? And what's good for me might be bad for you, and vice versa.
Yes. So, if you imagine, the acorn and how everything inside of the acorn is the potential for the oak, right? But as humans, we have all of those potentials. But because we're socialized, we're going to be taught to, don't hit your brother, or don't be aggressive, or if you're a boy, don't cling too much to your mother, or, don't cry if you get, hurt in the soccer game. And so these things, many of our natural qualities will be socialized out of us. And of course, things happen. Hurts occur. People aren't perfect, so we don't make perfect parents. And, along the way, there will be trauma. Sometimes it's trauma. Sometimes it's just hurt and disappointment. If you're a particularly sensitive child, things might hurt you that wouldn't hurt somebody else. But all of these experiences really shape us, and we learn how not to be. If crying on the playground gets me teased, then I'm going to learn real quick how to suppress that, how to not be perhaps sensitive, or how to not show pain. And so that can actually fall into the personal shadow. It depends on your life experience. So we have a personal shadow. We also have collective shadow.
And do we, in your experience, do we overanalyze our shadows more than we sort of try to illuminate our givings?
Well, the interesting thing is that the shadow, these traits will fall into the unconscious, and the thing about the unconscious is that, as James Hollis says, it's unconscious, so we're not aware of it. And when we're not aware of something that's inside of us, the old trope about, you point one finger forward, you've got three pointing back. And so, if I see someone who's exhibiting, let's say, greed or an abuse of power, I'm going to have a lot of feeling about that. So the question is, how is that in me? Mm-hmm. And so this is part of, I think the imperative of Jungian work today is that we take seriously our own shadow work, so that we're not continuing to put that in the world. We're not building that, or contributing that in the world. If we look at our political parties right now. If you want to know what the shadow of one party is, look at what they're saying about the other. It works both ways.
Yeah. So just to divert a little bit, and we're going to come right back to dreams. What do you? I know you do social work, and what type of work do you do, and how does the practice sort of dovetail into your interest in dreams?
So I'm a clinical social worker. I've been in practice for almost 30 years. Over the years, I've done a lot of different kinds of clinical practice, but I've always had an interest in Jung. I started doing my own work way back when I was an early therapist, as we all should. As therapists, we need to be working on ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. So I took that very seriously, invested lots of time and energy in that. And in my clinical work, what I found is that some people were looking for something different. They were looking for symptom relief. Of course, I would see couples too. But there are some clients who come in who are ready for some of the what we call depth work, and who tend toward more symbolic thinking. And so whenever I can ask about dreams, if a person perks up and says, "Oh yes, I have lots of dreams. I'd love to talk about them," then this is a good candidate for more of the Jungian work, more of the depth work. Some people are not interested, and that's okay, and they'll always be a part of my practice that I would say is more of a general clinical practice. But the Jungian work is just fascinating to me.
Social worker. Aren't we all just products of how we were raised? Is that a quick way to sum it up? I mean, it's extremely complicated and complex, but we are products of how we were raised, right?
We're very, very influenced by of course, our parents, our families of origin, our local culture, our broader culture. And again, back to the unconscious, we have other influences about which we're not even aware. And so, that could probably take us off in a different direction. But to answer your question, yes, we are very influenced by our families. And, so if an individual is born whole, theoretically, let's just say we're born whole, and we go back to just life happens, and so the child is going to begin to sort of separate these parts from of self. Don't be too loud, don't be too rambunctious, don't be aggressive. It depends. I think male messaging is different than female messaging in general. And certainly cultural messaging matters too. If you look at an Eastern religious background orientation versus Southern Catholic, you're going to see different influences there about what's proper, what's not proper. But one of the things that happens is that we begin to develop these things that we call complexes, right? And that's where we learn that in order to get along in the world, it's not okay to be this. I'll just use myself as an example. As a woman growing up in the South, there's no way I think I could have escaped a good girl complex, good Catholic girl. So what happens with all of those traits for a female in this culture when she needs to be assertive or needs to be... It
affects every decision you make.
Exactly. And we can probably find parallels with males, with you as a man. You could probably relate from stories of your own.
Right.
And so, yes, we're influenced by our families and our culture, and also this is how we come to this idea of complexes and how that influences our way in the world. And this is all part of what we do in therapy, is talk about what is blocking the natural flow of life's energy.
Look, I'm tracking well. I love every second of it. Okay, I'm gonna take my 6 shooters out a second. So we have we're nothing but thoughts running through our brains that we're filtering. Thoughts is I'm gonna use my buddy Parrish Taylor. He's the EQ guy, emotional intelligence guy. It's thoughts is nothing but pictures, photographs, and words. And we're processing them, and we're usually processing from the past, or we're projecting these thoughts in the future. And so all day our brains, not our spirit, but our brains process all of these thoughts. Sometimes people obsess over things, over thoughts. So it isn't dreams just your brain purging all that crap at night. You know, you sort of side with Jung in that a dream is sort of our spirit trying to tell us something to redirect what the 3D world's doing. So how bad did I just jack that up for you? Can you respond to that?
Well, I guess one of the things that I would say is that in addition to thoughts, we have very important information from our feelings, from emotion, from feeling. And that feeling energy is going to give us good information, too, about where, for example, our complexes might be, where we might be caught in terms of, I'm going to just call it an inner dilemma. You know, I want, there's something in me that wants to move my life in this direction, but I cannot because I think I have to stay here and do this. For example, when a person comes in and they, you know, are deeply dissatisfied with a career, and you know, how can I change careers at this time when I have a family that depends on me, for example?
That's a common one.
So dreams are, according to Jung, dreams are like these little personalized messages from the unconscious, from the self, if you will, the capital S, the organizing principle inside of us that is always working toward our development, our movement in the world and our movement forward.
But don't you think, Monica, say, I don't know, a lot of people, I used to when I was a kid, I guess it was stress triggered, dream about falling or dream about something, you know, where there was doom involved. And, or sometimes I just have the dumbest dreams I'm embarrassed to even talk about because they make zero sense. Can we get caught up overanalyzing what a dream really is and trying to find meaning? Is it what's the reason for people trying to just find and discover some kind of clue or meaning to give them direction?
I think it's very purposeful. I think it's very meaningful. I don't think that there's a way. I mean, I have seen people, and I've certainly have had, you know, been a part of this process in trying to understand the meaning of a dream. We can sort of beat it flat, or try to wring all of the meaning out of it, and we can't. We will never actually know fully. We can't possibly fully understand the meaning of a dream. But man, when we have these dreams that come to us, and we are working with someone who can help us look at it symbolically. It's not what's actually happening in the dream, it's what the symbols are saying to us and how they relate to us personally. It's a very powerful thing.
So as a clinician, are there common denominators? Like, is there, hey, I was dreaming this and this and this, and you as a clinician can say, well, I think that means this. You're processing it this way, and help them out with the dream. Is that common?
That can be part of the conversation, yes, but I'll always ask for the individual's associations with those symbols or with the experience of falling, for example. That's not an uncommon.
You would ask,
like
if I was your
motif.
patient, you would ask me. I'd say, I keep having these dreams of me falling. And would you say, how do you interpret that?
I would say, what does falling mean to you?
Okay, right.
Tell me about falling. What does that mean to you? What is the experience? But really, what is it to you?
Could be vulnerability. It could be scared of failing. Could be a lot of things.
Loss of control, losing your footing.
And so you're saying the therapeutic value there is to interpret that?
Yes, because when we can look at that and interpret that, we can often find the way to help the person get unstuck. And
Are they stuck most of the time? Are they? What is most of them doing? Because are they just sort of obsessing over this decision?
Well, people come in for all sorts of things,
Yeah.
right? It could look like depression. It can look like anxiety. But the energy has somehow stopped flowing in life. And, sometimes there are compensatory behaviors like overeating or drinking or, or other things.
I was talking to Roy Pettifees. He was on the show a while back.
Mm-hmm.
He says a lot of it's channeled through just anxiety and anxiety behavior.
Mm-hmm.
You see that also?
Yes, there's a lot of anxiety, but what we want to understand is the origin. Where is this coming from and why? Why is this symptom visiting me now? Jung has a great quote about every symptom is a failed attempt at a cure.
That's nice.
So we want to look at why is this symptom visiting you now?
Let's stay on Jung for a while because you're heavy studying it. What's his deal?
Unus Mundus.
Unus Mundus is one life. Is that what that means? And so
One with the world, one
world. How does that associate with his dreams, or is that a different topic that Jung?
It's a term from alchemy. Jung. If you study Jung, you can go in so many different directions, which is why it can be very overwhelming. So he talks about alchemy. He talks about dream interpretation. He talks about personality types. And you can go in so many different directions. That's a term from what I'm remembering in alchemy. We hear certain spiritual directors or teachers. Jung was one of them, but I know more modern teacher today is Richard Rohr. They talk about the first half of life and the second half of life, and in the first half of life, we are literally building life. We're building a strong ego, a strong sense of self. It might be where we get educated, it might be where we get married, it might be where we build families and start, building a career. And then it's the second half of life that we start asking questions about meaning. And this, too, is where clients will come in searching for something, feeling a general malaise or even a depression or perhaps anxiety. They're looking for more meaning because I've done all of the things I was supposed to do. Why am I not happy? And so this is where we can start looking at dreams, for example. And when we are, consciously paying attention to our dreams, this is really important. We don't have to know exactly what this dream means, but if we've tended to it, if we've written it down, and
it could be a catalyst to shoot.
The unconscious is already working for us. Psyche is already moving us forward because we're paying attention. And so it's not about, okay, I'm leaving my family, I'm going to do all of this, work on individuation, and I'm going to be so self-absorbed now for the rest of my life. No, it's so that we can take what we're learning and carry it back into life. And that's where I think about the Unus Mundus, and that's where I think about, how we're all connected, and it is our responsibility to take what we've learned and who we are as we've grown in our consciousness, our awareness of ourselves, take that back and serve the world. Take it back into the world.
Well, he was also big into numbers. He loved sequence, and I looked into that Budacrop.
Yeah, the
And
Buddha brought.
Buddha
Yeah.
brought, and I'm just not a numbers guy. I guess I'm trying to be more aware. My wife's a numbers girl, so it means everything to her. Like she attached to that quick. I guess I'm whatever, but the one world, Unus Mundus, is, I'll give you my thoughts and I appreciate a comment on it. I just believe that it's kind of the 3D, 5D thing I think we touched on the other day.
Mm-hmm.
And, 3D meaning that we live in this life for ourselves. We feel like we're an individual amongst a bunch of other individuals. And eventually, if you travel to 5D, which I'm trying, really the best way I try to put it is we're the sum of each other's energy. We're the sum of it. I'm not competing with you. I'm not sizing you up. I'm here to say, hey, let me learn more about you. You can learn more about me, and we'll walk out a greater sum.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the one world, Unus Mundus, I think there's a lot of teeth in that, because if you really view the world that way, I find it's glorious. I mean, it's just a great way to wake up and approach the world. But I think they were trying to tap in a lot of that energy and put some definition to it. And dreams is something that is hard to study, huh? It's because it's sort of it's a dream.
Yeah.
Just comment on what I said.
What I would say is that, we have a personal unconscious, but there is also a collective unconscious, and we are a part of that too. And so through my dreams, I may have material that's familiar to me, and I may have material that's coming from the collective unconscious. And so, people, there are now studies about people who had dreams before 9/11, very vivid dreams just prior to 9/11. And then the study of dreams since 9/11, and you would be amazed at the similarities and at the connectedness of people from all over the world, and how these particular events, affected these individuals. And so, yes, you have a personal unconscious, I have a personal unconscious, but we are both part of a collective unconscious. You affect me, and I affect you. And that's very much a part of the work in therapy, but also in dream circles or in conversations like this, which I think is a beautiful part of your mission.
Well, does quantum physics come into your thought process?
I have not read what Carl Jung has said about quantum physics. I don't believe that was part of, what he talked about. But what we know is that he was pointing to the very same things that quantum physics is describing, is defining. So he knew, but he was speaking of it obviously in
I think
in
that fills
terms.
in a lot of holes, quantum physics, just simply because it's fairly unscientific. We don't know. We know something's there. Mm-hmm. We feel it, and it connects. We just don't know enough about it yet. First off, it's okay not to know as a human being. It's okay not to know.
Right.
But
it doesn't mean it isn't true or real. Because we can't see it or know it with absolute certainty.
Yeah.
And back to your original question about the relevance of Jung's work, that's it. This all ties in together.
Yeah, I would have loved to seen him live another 100 years and study quantum physics a little more. I think the
When was that
giant.
first defined? Do you know? When was quantum physics first defined as a study? It was
I don't
after
know
his
enough
death, I'm
about it. I
sure.
know Einstein jumped on it. There was a couple of them. He bailed out on it. I think he just realized it was going to take up too much time and energy. Um, he was dealing with the physical world, and so, you know, um, I just something's there.
Hmm.
Something's there. I mean, if I believe in frequencies, I believe in energy levels, and if you're on the right same frequency and energy level, then I think that's what gets quantum connecting and firing off anywhere in the world. You was mentioning the 911, 9/11 folks. I think they were just plugged in to
Hmm.
something,
Hmm.
even if it was the people that was doing the wrongdoing. Somehow or another, they had this intuition, and so we're not going to solve it today. So why are you fixated on Jung? Because you infatuated with his work? Do you study other people? Or you just Jung has such a body of work. You
Right,
can go a lifetime just.
right,
He
right.
must have just had an incredible high functioning brain, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I was introduced to his work again in my own personal early days of therapy. The person that I was working with became an analyst over the years, and so, I've had my feet wet and have been, in that world for a long time. But in my practice, I sort of I broadened it quite a bit. I tried to learn a lot of different things. And it's been really over the last, I don't know, 10 years or so that I have found myself wanting to come back here and be more focused on Jung's work because, again, second half of life, I see the value. I really appreciate the value of that work. And so, I'm a social worker, and at this point in life, I decided to go ahead and pursue more formal training in his work. And so the goal ultimately is to become an analyst, which is the designation of a person who studies Jung, a Jungian analyst. It's just its own designation.
They define as dream workers that I looked up. Do y'all use that term much?
No, no. Um, there are a lot of disciplines that have kind of, come in and found Jung's work and have sort of expanded on it. But I really appreciate the fundamentals, the original work, and Jungians do dream work or dream analysis is what they, how you might hear it.
Where does PTSD? I'm sure you run across that in clinic. How does dreams? I mean, you hear night terrors, and my grandpa was in World War II, and he lived with terrors till he died. I think he didn't talk about it much, but my grandma would tell me that. Um, Nightmares, dreams, night terrors. How much of that do you see, and did Jung address that?
Yeah, he didn't talk about it as PTSD, but you know, he he certainly talked about it in terms of the complexes and what Donald Cowshed is an analyst who has written a couple of terrific books about treating PTSD from a Jungian perspective, and basically they're splintered or split off personalities, which we know as complexes. And the reason that happens is for survival. When the experience is so absolutely overwhelming for the individual, it's too much to bear. And
So it's
so
a natural way to heal.
it's a natural way to survive. But then we have these split off parts that are hurting. that are needing our attention. And again, the psyche wants us to be whole. It wants to heal us. And so sometimes these nightmares or dreams will surface as an invitation to take a look so that healing can occur and reintegrate these wounded or disowned parts.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
No, it does. I'm just processing it, and I guess I immediately have compassion for all those people that are out there that's dealing with this, and
Absolutely.
they walk amongst us. That's why you got to give grace all the time.
Absolutely.
So what do you want to do in your next chapter in regards to what do you want to share with small groups, big groups, or whatever? How are you gonna compile these subject matters for dreams? If I want to go to a class and it's Dreams 101, what does that look like for you?
Well, I'm in the process of putting together a dream group where it's probably going to be partly psychoeducational, so we can kind of have some fundamentals about how we want to approach dreams from a Jungian perspective, because as you're pointing out, there are many different ways to approach a dream and many different ways to look at what a dream might mean, whether it's just sort of a nightly taking the trash out, which there is some truth to that. But we believe that there's so much more as well. And so I think the dream group is going to be structured with some psychoeducation at the beginning, and then individuals bring in dreams, and we'll start talking about symbols and how to look at this. I'm wanting to. We used to have a very active Jung society where we would have host lecturers. We don't do that anymore, and so I'm trying to find. What is the opportunity now to bring in some of these concepts again as they are relevant today? Working with dreams is only one of them.
So Jung is still pretty much the gold standard when it comes to the dream studies, or has anyone picked it up since he has? I mean, is it clinical, or is it looked at as sort of a pseudo practice?
Not in my opinion.
Not in your opinion. But I'm talking about.
No, perhaps some.
Well, let me ask you this from the medical community standpoint.
Maybe, because Jung was a scientist. He was a psychiatrist, and he studied these things. But one of the ways that he differs from what we have today is that our counseling approach, therapy approach is very much a medical model, and his was not. His really was more about it was more of a developmental model. This is this is something that is sort of organic in each of us, and we want to work with this energy rather than, let's say, trying to, medicate it, for example, or treat the symptoms.
Can we talk about that a second?
Mm-hmm.
Because, okay, you mentioned there's the body, everybody,
We have
the body, tissue,
physical
blood,
body.
physical
Mm-hmm.
body, high blood pressure, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's your mind, and then there's your spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And so your mind, in my opinion, is processing thoughts, pictures, and words, and you're dealing with it.
And feelings, I would say.
And feelings.
Because our psychology, it includes, feeling energy.
Feeling energy, 100%. We're developing a belief system. Sometimes we realize our belief system might be
It's faulty.
Mm-hmm. Good word. And so we change that. But what's pulling it? What's driving it? And that's our spirit, our soul, our uri is pulling it. And sometimes it's against all of these constructs in life.
Mm-hmm.
And so why do I have a complex? Why do I give a shit what anybody thinks about me? But we do. And so it changes our behavior, but it doesn't bring us to where we want to be. And so we're dealing with all of this, and then you go back to the body people, and they're going to say, well, you're depressed. Let me give you this antidepressant. Let me give you this. Let me give you that to fix you, because they're treating the body when, it's over here. So
Yeah, I have nothing against medication, and I've definitely seen medication
work well.
turn things around for individuals that were really, really suffering. But I think that, if we really take a different approach, we might be able to avoid a lot of need for medication if we look again at the individual's symptoms in a different way. One of the things that we haven't talked about in terms of the natural body is instinct. And Jung talks a lot about instinct and how our natural instinctive drives cannot be, subverted. We can't socialize those things out of us. We have to know that these things are important to us. And so that's a part of it too.
No, and by no means was I saying that, the medical community, which I'm very connected to.
Mm-hmm. Me too. I don't want to say that either.
No.
There is a time and a
God
place.
For them. Time
Absolutely.
and a place for all of that. And
Absolutely.
It works for people near and dear to me, and thank God for it. But
sometimes we're not getting to the root of the problem. Sometimes medication is really just alleviating symptom, and so it's like a merry-go-round. The issue, until it's addressed, is going to keep coming back around, or we have to introduce more medication.
Do you follow Gabor, Dr. Gabor, much? He
a little bit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he thinks everything comes from trauma, and he talks about dealing with trauma, and it goes from drug addictions to different addictions, dealing with all the things you've been talking about. Interesting.
Yes.
That guy's interesting about that,
Yes, and we talk about the difference between the capital T traumas and the small T traumas, and at some level, does it really matter?
Capital T and small T. I like it. Did Carl Jung do some psychedelics or what? Do you know?
No, well, there's a lot of controversy about that. A lot of people speculate that when he wrote the Red Book, he might have been taking some psychedelics. The Jungians that I know do not believe that. They believe, no, these were true encounters with the unconscious. He practiced what he preached. He did the work. And in the work with the unconscious, you're going to find all sorts of images, and that's a whole other topic.
Well, you hear a little bit more and more about microdosing psychedelics to do it. I think when LSD came out, though, I guess that was after World War II, probably right around Vietnam. But our government just shut it down. I personally never did it. But I think they're making some advances in that. Are you hearing it similar?
I am. And I would also say that, Jung's work with what he calls active imagination, it is accessing that same realm.
I want to talk about active imagination because like, for me, I believe, in manifesting. And so when they say dream big, I used to say, well, okay, I hope tonight I dream big, or I'll think of some big things. But um, if I have a piece of artwork, or if I have something I want to accomplish, I'll load my thoughts, focused in, calm my chatter down, and I can actually, even if I'm dozing off during the day, but for sure at night, sort of load my brain to work while I'm sleeping, and that's why I like to journal. All those books right there, I'll come up and say, okay, I don't know exactly what this means, but I'm gonna write it down. I'm gonna draw a little doodle a picture, and but once you start doing that, and if it's authentic, it'll take root.
Mm-hmm.
If you're trying to become something mimicking someone, it won't.
Mm-hmm.
It won't graft.
It's coming from the same place that your dreams are coming from.
Yeah. So
That's
I
why.
love the where we're at. I would love to learn more about Jung. I mean, you got me doing that. But I don't know. You just don't know if it's antiquated science back then, because it wasn't that long ago. But I remember when I was a kid, like, trying to hypnotize you and thinking about your dreams and your thoughts and this and that. It seemed like psychiatry sort of grabbed a lot of that stuff. I don't know.
What feels antiquated to you when as you're just getting
I'm just
into
thinking of
some
like the
Jung?
30s and all, and these guys are saying, all right, these are dreams. This is what it means. I'm going to write this essay, and that's it. That's what it is. And so I don't think he lived long enough, as none of us do, to see it in clinic and in trial and see what comes out. I wish he had.
But he did. He did.
He
A
did?
lot of his
Okay.
work was with his own patients, was with the hospital. The name leaves me at this moment, but a lot. I mean, really, most of his work was either directly with patients or with his own psyche.
Hmm. We'll talk a little bit about that. What did he teach us? What did he teach the psychiatry field about it? Why? I guess why don't we hear more about it? Or maybe it's just me.
Because I think it's because of the development of the whole medical model, and since the DSM came into the picture, we don't
I'm not
give the
familiar with
same
that.
the diagnostic and statistical manual of psychiatric
And
disorders.
so what do you mean by it came in the picture?
Well, once that was published, and I think it was first published in the 70s or 80s, that's how we started diagnosing in order to get insurance reimbursement. You have to meet this criteria.
That makes me furious right there. So they left a body of work behind.
Yeah, that was not seen as valuable or in the same light.
Says
in the same
who?
way.
I mean, I don't. So you frustrated
This
with
is
it also?
this is as I understand it, yes. And so, that sort of made sense to me. It's like, oh, that's how I got swept into this other, we got swept in this other direction where it's very medicalized, and where we've really separated from the natural instinct of the body and the spirit of the human, and how that, along with psychology, really it's important to see these things together.
Isn't a lot of the value that a human being sits still for a second and blocks the noise and the chatter and just analyzes this, sitting still and discovering what their spirit wants them to do? And dreams are a part of it.
Absolutely.
It's
Right.
no, it's just a couple breadcrumbs along the trail, but it ignites something. It will the catalyst is analyzing. Is that fair?
The catalyst, say,
The
ask me that in a different way. So,
Okay, so if I'm going to analyze my dreams as well as my thoughts, as well as where I'm getting this pull from, isn't the value in me looking and analyzing at what my spirit wants with no noise? Is that just sort of which gets me even further down the road on why the hell I'm on this ball of dirt?
yeah, I think I understand what you're asking. I think we have to sit still and consider what's happening in our inner life. That's where we're opening ourselves up to the unconscious. Remember, we have our conscious awareness and we have the unconscious. But most of us are just operating on this conscious level of
100%.
awareness. But when you stop long enough
Yeah.
and you put your pen to your journal
Yes,
and you
yes.
listen to what's
Thank you
coming
so
up
much.
and you get these images of your art, this is coming from the unconscious, which is where our dreams are coming from. Now, the thing about dreams is that I can't well interpret my own dream. As they say, it's like looking at your own back. You cannot. You
So how
have
do
to
you
have
do
a
it?
reflective way of doing that.
Which is
So
another
some of
person?
that is to study the symbols, and study how Jung interpreted them, but it's also very helpful to work with another person.
So if you journal and you come back later to look at it, that's
It might look different
it
then.
might look. You might not be looking at your back. You sort of looking at it in a
In a
different
different way.
perspective.
Right.
Do you meditate?
Yes.
Okay. So what's your go to meditate? Like does that calm you down to get to you? Is it a portal to your unconscious?
Yes, I think of it as a practice, and sometimes I have so much chatter that it isn't the portal to the unconscious. Sometimes I'm just putting the pen to paper to write, just write, and then I'll get there. But meditation helps me to, quiet all of that chatter. It returns me to myself. It's the intention of returning to myself.
How often do you try to do it?
I try to do it every day. At my perfect no. I had learned a method called the Ziva method, and it was 15 minutes twice a day. I did that for a good while, and on a good day or in a good spell, I might do it like that. But yeah, I'm like anybody else, and maybe even more challenged to focus sometimes. So it is a practice. It's a discipline.
So how often do you dream, and how vivid are your dreams? They call them big dreams or whatever. I mean, what made you so? Did your clinic made you more uh, attracted to Jung, or your own self dreams and experiences?
It was deeply personal. It was my own experiences, not only in life but in my own personal analytic process.
Really? Okay.
But again, that's been since very, very early. I think I first went to therapy after a hard breakup, a 4-year relationship. I was in my early 20s.
Why did you do that to me?
It was a crushing, sort of experience. And I graduated from UL with a bachelor's degree in speech pathology and audiology. I knew I needed to get a master's in order to work in that, but I knew that wasn't my calling. So I answered an ad in the newspaper. That's how old I am. I answered an ad in the newspaper and went to work for a substance abuse facility.
Nice.
And it was there that I learned what clinical social work was. And I knew that was my calling.
Excellent.
That was my calling. Jung would call that synchronistic. I answered an ad and was led exactly where I needed to be. But it was in that period of time, before I had gotten into graduate school, the relationship had ended. It was a period where I was a little bit lost, and I had just been introduced to what therapy could could do or be like, and I thought, I want some of that. And I think it's certainly been a gift. It's been a privilege.
But were you dreaming then? Were you so you were like you were curious about your own personal dreams and what are the meaning and those things.
I became curious through the process.
And did
But-
you find Jung way back then?
Yeah, the therapist that I was working with was Jungian oriented, and so I was already being introduced to those ideas. But keep in mind, I was in the first half of my life, and so a lot of the material rang true for me. But I was also figuring life out, and so I really, it was over time that I really became steeped in it and could see the value of it.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely, one of the wonderful things about being able to live to my age anyway is that you really get to use a lot of that wisdom and that time and those experiences to figure out, who you want to become. It's never an ending process. As soon as you think this is exactly who I want to be, man, you just threw in the towel, huh?
Yeah, I think we're always growing. I mean, we're always growing. We don't stop growing. We might stop being committed to our own growth or stop participating on a conscious level in the process, but we are still growing.
Right.
That's another thing, another difference between Jungian work and traditional therapy is this whole, model of, 6 sessions, which is dictated by insurance, your approval of however many sessions you're expected to have in order to, solve your problem. And in the Jungian world, it doesn't happen like that. It's a long, slow process because we're examining and we're discovering and we're holding and we're moving through a very natural process, which isn't going to be pushed. It isn't going to be pressed.
And every human is different. They have different
Absolutely.
wiring and tools and capacity and everything that goes with it. Wow. So what about fantasies? How does that play into your dream world? Like, for example, is it a fantasy for me to dream about taking my trip with my Airstream around, or am I manifesting my dreams and letting everything help me fall in the universe, helping me on my path? How do you?
I think of fantasies like, dreaming while you're awake. It's daytime dreaming. It's your imagination, and it's very important.
Daydreaming, love it.
It's very important that we have, a relationship with not only our dreams that come to us at night, but our fantasies and our imaginings that happen during our waking hours.
Yeah.
That's informed
So
by
what's the healthy
unconscious,
balance?
too.
If you were to look at your mental health or a person's health in general, not that any of us can judge anything, but in your definition, what's a good healthy place to be with all of this?
With
I mean, we're critics of ourselves. We analyzing. We always have these complexes, like you're saying. We're trying to just live a healthy, life that is, is present. When you see someone who is healthy or at peace or at whatever, how do you gauge that?
my ears perked up when you said, we're critical of ourselves, or it's like that is sort of a that is a sort of a sign that we're in a complex, and because what we want is to be open and curious
Mm-hmm.
all of the time, if that's possible. So if you're
Yeah.
asking what's, like, that would be ideal, that we're open, we're in acceptance of ourselves as a whole, which means it's not only, these, likable parts of me, but the parts of me that, they're not so great. If you want to know what your shadow, they say, this is one of the things, again, you hear around in Jungian circles, if you want to know what your shadow is like, ask your spouse or your minister.
Let's bring your spouse in now. We're going to get juicy, right?
So it's to find peace and acceptance in our wholeness,
Mm-hmm.
and that we are all of it. We're all of it. It's not that we need to be critical of ourselves. It's that we know we got that too.
I know. I guess, it's judgmental. If I'm going to have a complex, that means I'm assuming you're going to judge me. And if I'm exposing these self-imposed flaws, then whatever. But if we're both sitting in these two chairs, knowing we're not going to judge each other, then, man, a lot of that goes away. And to me, that's when you hit a frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And then it will hit anybody on that frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be in Japan,
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that frequency is always there in the universe. Like, you probably plug into Carl Jung's frequency right now, even though he's been dead for a long time. I think it's there.
Yeah, and when I hear you talking about frequency, I know what you're talking about because I've been exposed to that, and I think that what we're talking about is the collective unconscious. And the thing about complexes is that they're not always triggered. They might be triggered in certain, situations or contexts, but in other contexts, but it's like they're not. That's not an issue for me. I'm not worried about that. So it's, when you first talked to me about the possibility of doing a podcast, I had a complex that got triggered. You saw my reaction. Oh, I don't know if I can do that, because my perfectionism, which you and I both know, I'm not perfect, I'm not going to be, but there's a complex that says I should be, right? And so that got triggered. So it's not going to get triggered all of the time, but there's certain conditions or certain situations where it will. Now, if someone at the grocery store says, Monica, I don't know who you think you are, but blah, 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 I might easily go, whew, she's having a bad day.
Yeah.
And it doesn't trigger me.
Wow.
So we can't necessarily predict, when our complex might get triggered, but we all have them. And it goes back to what I said earlier. All of us have all of it.
I know.
And so ultimately,
Yeah.
That individuation process is where we are living our most authentic individual selves in the world. Because, it's mind-boggling to imagine that in the history of humanity, there's never been a Bob Luke. Ever.
You got that right.
And you know what? There never will be. You are the only one. It's singular.
Well,
and
that's
so
right.
It's like you are here to live your fullest, most authentic self. That's what you're here for. That's what the world needs.
Well, and the
It
same with you,
matters.
and the same with everyone. And to elaborate a little more on conscious and unconscious, I'm learning, I'll speak for myself, to bounce between the two psyches or worlds or whatever. Like, for example, isn't this a delicious, I'm so conscious about this cup of latte.
Mm-hmm.
And you will be too. And then together, consciously, in this very moment, we're conscious about that. And so when people walk around conscious and in the moment and not flashing the photographs and the words from the past to the future. I'm worried about the future or what's going on. Why did I do that in the past? If you're conscious of the moment, again, it falls into that where we like to be. It takes a flex. Parrish Taylor calls it a flex. So, for example, I'll do a little thing with you. Like if you hold your hand out like this for me, and
Like this?
like this, you have a bad thought. It keeps coming back and back. Okay, you put it in there. Okay, and you say, I don't want to think about that. What did you say your complex was on? The podcast. I don't want to think about the podcast. So you let go. Okay. Guess what's going to happen? 2 seconds. There it is again. And that goes on and on. And so what he says is you got to replace it with another thought trigger. Like for me, it might be Airstream. Okay, I don't want to think about this thought, but Airstream, boom. Now my thoughts are, what am I going to do with this Airstream? I'm going to see these American Indians or whatever. And then all of a sudden that flex, he calls it a flex, triggers better thoughts, which turns into manifesting, which turns into dreams, which fantasies, all the things you're talking about that the unconscious world brings. So this is a question, if it's manipulated right, if you understand who your being is, you can sort of train yourself to be in a better place.
Yeah, I think that, our perspective might be a little different in terms of, rather than replacing the thought, it's understanding with compassion, how did I get to that I believed that I had to be perfect? And having more understanding about that. Now, our complexes don't completely go away. But when we're lucky, they are triggered less often, right? Less frequently. So, yeah, it's having some understanding about, that's this. You were talking about trauma, that's the part of me that's protecting me from something somewhere that I may have been hurt because by some idea that I wasn't perfect. It's there to protect us.
So please help me out with that, because I always never could understand in therapy why, and we're talking about replacing, why in therapy, I'm asking you as a therapist, if I'm trying to get over a trauma or a situation, why in therapy do you always go back to revisit it, to interpret it, versus trying to rewire your brain to move on to something more pleasurable or something more meaningful? It seems to me if we're going back to reanalyze something I didn't want, to happen, why is that part of the therapy?
Well, it depends. It depends on a lot of things. If we had a specific example, I could speak more specifically. But basically, it's about reintegrating some part of self, some aspect of yourself that's been left behind or disowned as a result of the hurt or the trauma or whatever occurred. So, to not think about it, sort of replace the uncomfortable thoughts, then we're not really dealing with or reuniting ourselves with these disowned parts. So it's about reintegrating parts of ourselves that we've had to separate from because it was hurtful, or it was, something harsh happened, or some trauma occurred, or it was too painful.
And so you try to give the patient tools to deal with it versus a pattern of, like, I'm just going to flee this situation. Or, they have bad responses for it.
Right. Because the risk is that I'm going to continue to avoid
forever.
those situations because that was painful. I'm not doing that again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about healthy adaptation.
How much of that is through the developmental years? And I guess I'll tell you what I think of in here. Like, if it doesn't develop at this age or whatever, then you sort of never develop. Is there some truth to that still? Like for example, if someone has abandonment issues or daddy issues or whatever, that trust issues. Probably you see a lot of trust issues, I'm sure.
All of those things, yeah. Abandonment.
And so as an adult, if I didn't properly get through them as a child,
we have to go back there.
Really? God, man.
And reclaim those energies that were left behind, or those aspects of development that are necessary here. But that's how healing happens.
Yeah.
That's how those things can be healed, and then we don't have to keep going around and around and through the same maladaptive behaviors. Because what happens if there's a fear of abandonment, or a daddy issue, or a mama issue? Guess how that's going to express itself, and how the partners that you choose, and how you relate to those partners.
Wow.
And how you relate to
and then there's legacy
children.
parenting. You're going to parent like you were raised.
So it's what we bring to consciousness, right? From the unconscious, we want to bring it to consciousness, reconcile those things so that they don't continue to haunt us in the unconscious.
Well, I say love, grace, and forgiveness goes a long way.
Absolutely.
Even if it's for yourself.
Absolutely.
And if you can get to a place where you're creating and you're, I think my mortality and dealing with it has become liberating, because
it is.
in the end, nobody gets out alive, and when you die, 10 minutes later, you're forgotten. Your family, everybody moves on. They can sell your car. And so why are we so worried? What are we worried about? I'm asking you.
What are we worried about? That's a good question. Yeah.
Okay, well, look, at the cafe, I know I'm not going to put you on the spot, but we're going to have some dream classes over here. What do you say?
I'd love to do that.
Okay.
I would love to do that.
So for the audience, what would that possibly look like?
It might look like a day-long sort of seminar. It might look like a series of 2-hour gatherings, different ways to do it.
Good. Well, we're going to do that. We're going to do it here at the cafe. I'm trying to get her to do her own podcast. How awesome would that be? And, well, we can just talk all day, So maybe we'll update everybody on the next podcast and see what we've learned and what some of these things have transpired. But we're going to have a good time. We're going to drink some good coffee, and we're going to have some good friends around and do some fun things. How's that sound?
That sounds great. This has been fun.
What did we leave out? Any messages or anything you think?
Oh, I'm sure we left out a bunch of stuff,
Right.
But we'll come back to it.
We'll come back to it. Well, hey, dreams are real. Carl Jung. I'm just diving into him. I always knew about him, and he was this and that, but it jumped on my algorithm. I guess my phone picked it up.
It hurt us.
Yeah, it hurt us, and now I'm getting all of these TikToks and Instagram things. But I like that.
If I could say this, I would recommend all of your listeners to buy a notebook or a journal.
Yep.
Put it at your bedside. You can actually voice record on your phone if you want. There's some nifty little lighted pens if you want to be really, special. But write down your dreams, even if it's a snippet, even if it's just an image. Write it down. And you might reflect on it later. You might just start keeping a log. I did that for a long time. I was just writing dreams. I was raising kids and working, and I didn't have time to analyze or do anything outside of my, analysis. But writing it down tells the unconscious, I care, I'm interested, it matters, and then the unconscious works with us.
Correct.
And you find yourself remembering them more, just with the intention, just going to bed at night with the intention to the dream maker, I'm listening. You'd be amazed at what can surface.
The universe is going to give you exactly what you ask for. And so if you're if you're manifesting it and writing it down and thinking about it, it's going to give you exactly what you want. So
yeah, that's a good point. We often say that, the face, I'm going to get this wrong, but the face with which we meet the unconscious is the face that's reflected back to us. And so if we're afraid or we're not trusting or we're not taking it seriously, but when we really are taking it seriously, that's what returns to us.
I agree. Well, listen, it's all fascinating, and in the end, we just want everybody to live their best life, and so, just let your flower bloom as bright and as big as it can, and don't worry about so many things, and all those wonderful things. Well, Monica, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
so hopefully we can do some more work together here and give some people some exciting things to do. We're going to wrap this one up. Keep up with the cafe. We're getting our caterer's license, which means it's going to give us all kind of new cool things to do here at the cafe events. So y'all stay tuned. Y'all keep up. Talk to y'all later, and thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks.
Later.